She said I'd grown cold. But how do you stay warm when the person who once lit your world starts pulling away? 16. The story opens in the quiet after-hours of a shared workspace. An office, studio, or community center where late nights used to feel comforting rather than heavy. It's early winter, evening settling in with that blue-gray dusk that arrives too quickly. Fluorescent lights hum overhead, but the room feels dimmer than usual, like warmth has drained from the air itself. The narrator, a 24-year-old man, arrives expecting the familiar rhythm of easy conversation. For months, he has grown used to the presence of a confident, self-possessed woman in her early 40s, someone whose maturity drew him in gently. She wasn't flirtatious. Her steadiness and subtle vulnerability warmed the space, made him feel seen and understood. The connection was quiet but undeniable. Tonight, something is different. She looks up from her desk when he enters, offers a polite smile, the kind people give strangers when required by courtesy, not affection. In the past, her eyes softened when they met his. Her shoulders relaxed, voice lowered, leaning closer as though unconsciously drawn toward him. But now, she keeps her posture deliberately measured, spine straight, arms tucked close, guarding her warmth. He approaches with documents they've been collaborating on. As he extends them, their fingers almost brush. A moment he used to relish, the subtle electricity of accidental contact. This time, she withdraws her hand quicker than necessary, as if afraid of being misread. The gesture stings more than he wants to admit. He asks a casual question about revisions. She answers briefly, glancing at the clock even though she's hours away from leaving. No hostility, just detachment, distance. He senses she is protecting herself. He wonders from what or from whom. A silence settles between them, but not a comfortable one. In the past, silence was shared, warm, familiar, full of unspoken understanding. This one feels cold, like a draft slipping through a broken window. He shifts in his seat, pretending to focus on his laptop, but his mind is elsewhere, replaying memories of late nights where laughter echoed softly between them. Mugs of steaming tea warming their hands, conversations lingering longer than necessary. She finally breaks the silence. "You're quiet today." Her tone isn't accusatory, but it holds concern, or maybe discomfort. The narrator briefly considers telling her the truth, that he's quiet because he feels pushed away, and he doesn't understand why. But he swallows the confession, voice catching in his throat. Instead, he forces a small smile that doesn't reach his eyes. "Just tired," he lies gently. Internally, confusion twists into longing. He senses a boundary forming where there was once openness. Did he do something wrong? Did she realize what was growing between them? Something deeper than professional respect? And pull back out of fear? He wants to ask. He doesn't. Respect keeps him silent, even as the distance between them feels colder than the winter outside. The emotional goal of this part is to immerse the audience in a quiet shift, a fracture forming beneath calm surfaces. The narrator feels her withdrawal but hasn't yet understood the reason. The physical coldness mirrors emotional chill, setting the stage for tension that unfolds gently but profoundly. Snow begins falling outside, slow and gentle at first, tapping softly against the large window near her desk. The world beyond the glass glows faintly under streetlights, flakes swirling like silent confessions. Inside the nearly empty building, every small sound seems amplified. The hum of a vending machine, the distant elevator bell, the creak of heating pipes struggling against the cold. The narrator notices her arms fold across her chest, fingers rubbing the fabric of her cardigan as if seeking comfort. She's usually composed, rarely showing vulnerability. Yet now she shivers slightly, goosebumps visible along her forearms. It stirs something protective in him, an instinctive desire to offer warmth, not just physical but emotional. He hesitates. In the past, he might have casually draped his jacket across her chair or sparked a playful comment that would melt tension. But now, uncertainty weighs heavy. He fears she'll interpret concern as a crossing of lines. The distance still lingers from the first part, subtle but unmistakable. He stands slowly, crosses to a small storage closet, and pulls out a space heater. Dust clings to the top. It's been unused for weeks. He plugs it in near her desk and turns the dial. A low rumbling starts before warm air begins to flow, pushing back against the cold corners of the room. The warmth spreads gradually, mirroring how their emotional distance might thaw, not suddenly but carefully. She glances up, surprised. Her expression softens for a moment, the guarded facade flickering. "Thank you," she says quietly, voice warm but edged with hesitation. He nods, returning to his workstation, though his thoughts remain anchored to her reaction. Minutes stretch. They work in silence. The heater's glow casts shadows that dance across the walls, their movements slow and hypnotic. The warmth seeps into the air, but the emotional chill remains. He tries to break through the silence, asking about an upcoming project. She responds curtly, choosing words with precision, avoiding eye contact. Not cold, exactly cautious. He senses she wants to protect something fragile, though he can't name it. Her tone holds layers. Regret, restraint, maybe longing buried beneath professionalism. His memory drifts back to late nights months ago when conversations flowed effortlessly. She once shared stories of her youth, dreams she'd abandoned, fears she never voiced to colleagues her own age. He remembers how her eyes sparkled when she trusted him with small vulnerabilities. The present contrast aches, warmth fading into distance, like a dying ember under ash. The heater clicks softly, signaling a temperature adjustment. The sound cuts through his thoughts. He looks at her. For a brief second, she meets his gaze. Her eyes hold unspoken sorrow, almost pleading. A silent question both are afraid to articulate. What happened to us? The moment passes. She looks away. The air warms physically, yet emotional frost lingers. The metaphor becomes clear: warmth is a choice, and someone turned it off long before their confrontation. This part deepens the emotional wound before it's openly acknowledged. Silence intensifies the longing, setting the stage for the pivotal confrontation in the next keynote. Hours pass, though neither of them seems to make meaningful progress on their work. The air outside grows darker, snowfall thickening into a quiet storm that blankets the world beyond the windows. Inside, the heater hums steadily, filling the silence but failing to warm the emotional distance. The narrator types half-heartedly, every keystroke a distraction from the heavy awareness of her presence. He senses she's restless. Her breathing shifts, her posture tightening and loosening as though she's debating whether to speak. Her fingers worry the handle of her mug, tracing patterns along the ceramic, gripping and releasing rhythmically. The nervous gesture betrays what her composed expression tries to hide. Then, without looking at him, she releases a breath and speaks softly. "You've changed." The words land heavier than intended. The narrator freezes. His pulse quickens, not from fear, but from the shock of hearing aloud what he's been feeling silently. She turns toward him finally, eyes meeting his with controlled calm, but emotions flicker beneath the surface. "You're cold lately," she adds, voice steady yet fragile, as though the accusation costs her something. His first instinct is denial, but honesty rises instead, raw, unfiltered. A knot forms in his throat. He swallows hard. "I never meant to be," he replies quietly. He pauses, searching for courage he hasn't needed with her before. "It just felt like you turned off the warmth first." The air thickens as the vulnerability settles between them. Her reaction is subtle but unmistakable. Shoulders dipping slightly, a flicker of pain crossing her expression before composure returns. She looks away toward the snow-filled window, as though needing distance to absorb his words. The narrator feels torn, relieved to finally speak truth, yet fearful he's misread the situation. His chest tightens. He's not angry, only confused, aching for clarity. Their eyes meet again, and time feels suspended. She opens her mouth as if to respond, but hesitates. Her throat works, swallowing unspoken thoughts. The tension isn't hostile. It's tender and trembling, rooted in fear of acknowledging something deeper. The silence becomes a conversation of its own, both aware of a boundary they've tiptoed around for months. The heater hums steadily, blowing warmth that cannot reach the emotional frost. Finally, she speaks again, voice quiet, almost cracked. I didn't want to complicate things. The narrator senses layers beneath her words, concerns about perception, age, roles, consequences. His heart aches with understanding. The lights flicker as the storm intensifies. Shadows shift across her face, highlighting vulnerability she rarely shows. The emotional stakes rise organically. This moment plants seeds of confrontation that will blossom into confession later. The narrator isn't pushing. He's simply reflecting her retreat, revealing mutual misunderstanding. This part ends with both characters suspended in emotional recognition. The confrontation doesn't resolve the distance. It exposes it, making avoidance impossible moving forward. The metaphor of warmth versus cold becomes explicit. Emotional withdrawal disguised as protection, mistaken for indifference, transforming into longing unspoken. The storm outside intensifies, snow tapping urgently against glass, wind whistling faintly through unseen cracks. The office lights flicker again, dimming for a long second before humming back to life. The heater sputters, struggling against the dropping temperature. The room feels more isolated, as if the world beyond has disappeared beneath white silence. The narrator's heart is still beating hard from their exchange. His confession hangs in the air, heavy and fragile. He watches her stare at the storm, her profile illuminated by pale light. A strand of hair falls loose, brushing her cheek. She tucks it behind her ear with trembling fingers. The gesture is small, but he senses the effort beneath it. She's rattled, vulnerable, and unsure how to respond. Another flicker. The power cuts abruptly. Darkness envelopes them, broken only by faint emergency lights glowing near the hallway. The heater goes quiet. The sudden silence feels intimate, almost sacred. Instinctively, as the room plunges into shadow, she reaches out. Her hand finds his wrist, fingers curling around him for balance or reassurance. The contact is brief but searing. Her touch is warm despite the cold air, and the narrator feels his pulse thrum against her fingertips. She seems to realize what she's done and begins to pull away, slowly, like she's battling conflicting impulses. He gently shifts his arm, not gripping back, simply allowing her hand to rest a moment longer. The small act says what neither voices. I don't want you to retreat. Their breathing becomes audible in the quiet, sinking almost unconsciously. In that dimness, memories stir. Late nights when they sat close reviewing documents, shoulders brushing, sharing quiet laughter. Times when he caught her watching him with soft eyes before she masked the warmth. He wonders if she feels that same pull now, if the distance has hurt her as much as it confused him. She lets out a whisper, strained and honest. I didn't want things to become uncomfortable. Her thumb brushes his wrist lightly as she speaks, a tiny, unconscious caress. The narrator senses fear beneath her words, fear of judgment, impropriety, vulnerability, age difference, the unknown. He steps slightly closer, slow and deliberate to avoid startling her. Not closing the gap completely, respecting boundaries but refusing the coldness. His voice low. It was never uncomfortable. Not for me. His breath releases in a warm cloud visible in the cold air. The emergency lights cast soft shadows across her face. Her eyes glisten, not with tears, but emotion held tight beneath restraint. The vulnerability between them feels more intimate than any physical closeness they've shared. Silence returns, but this time it's different. Not cold, but charged, humming with unspoken possibility. The power surges back with a click. Fluorescent lights flare. The heater restarts, breaking the moment. Instinctively, she drops her hand, retreating slightly. But the warmth of that touch lingers. A boundary crossed unintentionally yet undeniably. The emotional temperature shifts. This part ignites hope. Distance wasn't indifference. Their mutual longing is real, surfacing through instinctive touch rather than confession. The physical closeness fractures the emotional walls, setting momentum toward deeper honesty and connection in the next part. The renewed hum of electricity brings light and warmth, yet neither of them moves immediately. The moment of instinctive connection lingers between them, pulsing in the space like a memory too vivid to ignore. She pulls her hand back slowly, not abruptly this time, almost regretfully. He senses the conflict within her. She exhales shakily, smoothing her cardigan sleeves as if grounding herself. Her posture stiffens again, signaling retreat, but her eyes betray longing and fear blended together. He can tell she's searching for distance while craving closeness. Minutes pass in strained silence. He wrestles with the weight of unspoken emotion, debating whether to break through her defenses or give her space. The vulnerability of the previous moment still beats loudly in his chest. He feels exposed, yet closer to understanding her. Finally, she looks at him. This time, the guarded professionalism slips slightly. Something raw flickers in her gaze. Recognition, sadness, maybe relief. She sits down slowly, gesturing toward the heater. "Come sit. It's warmer here," she murmurs. He joins her, maintaining respectful space yet noticeably closer than before. Their chairs angled toward one another, knees almost brushing. The warmth radiating from the heater mirrors the thawing tension. After a long pause, she begins speaking, not in her usual composed tone, but with a tremor of honesty. People talk, even when they shouldn't. He remains quiet, letting her continue. She looks down, twisting a ring on her finger anxiously. They notice how we are around each other. The implication lands heavy. She fears the perception of impropriety, of being judged for warmth toward someone younger, someone who looks at her with admiration that could be misread. Age difference, workplace rumors, societal whispers, all weight she carries silently. She finally meets his gaze again. "I didn't want to make things harder for you, or for me." He feels a pang of regret. The distance wasn't rejection. It was protection. She withdrew to shield them both from assumptions and consequences neither asked for. The realization softens him, dissolving irritation and confusion. He speaks gently, choosing truth over defense. "I pulled back because I thought I made you uncomfortable. I thought maybe I was reading too much into things." The confession feels vulnerable, like stepping into unfamiliar light. Her eyes widen faintly, as if she hadn't considered his perspective. Silence stretches again, but not the icy separation from earlier. This silence is heavy with understanding, shared hurt, and quiet possibility. She whispers, voice barely audible, "I was afraid of crossing lines." He nods slowly. He understands boundaries matter, not just rules but emotional limits. Yet restraint has caused its own damage. Their mutual withdrawal, born from fear of judgment, created the very coldness they now mourn. The heater clicks softly, blowing steady warmth between them, symbolic of emotional temperature rising. Their shared confessions dismantle barriers brick by brick, not through grand declarations, but through quiet honesty. This chapter reveals the root of distance. Not lack of affection, but love disguised as caution. The emotional stakes heighten. They see each other not as reckless temptations but as two individuals navigating tenderness within constraints. Both now understand the coldness wasn't abandonment, just the cost of caring in silence. The emotional terrain has shifted. What was once brittle silence has become fragile understanding. They sit close to the heater, its warmth slowly spreading into their bones. The storm outside rages on, wind pressing against the windows like nature itself urging them inward, toward truth, toward each other. She rubs her palms together, breath visible in the lingering chill. There's a tentative openness in her posture now. Shoulders relaxed, body angled subtly toward him. The moment feels suspended, awaiting a choice neither wants to abandon again. The narrator senses a rare vulnerability in her eyes. She has always been composed, graceful, measured, but now her guard has thinned. Trust hangs in the air, delicate but unmistakable. He shrugs off his coat and holds it out, not forcefully, but with gentle offering. "Here," he says quietly. "You're freezing." She hesitates, glancing at the coat and then at him as though weighing implications. This small gesture carries meaning beyond fabric and warmth. It invites closeness, acknowledges care, and risks misunderstanding. Finally, she accepts. Her fingers brush his hand in the exchange, a tender contact that neither rushes to break. She drapes the coat across her shoulders, inhaling the faint scent of his cologne. She closes her eyes for a moment, letting the warmth settle. Her voice softens. "Thank you." Their chairs shift unconsciously closer. The space between them narrows, the air thick with gentle tension. The heater clicks again, as if marking this quiet turning point. She speaks, vulnerability threaded through her tone. "I didn't realize how much I missed this." She doesn't define this, but the narrator understands. Shared closeness, effortless warmth, emotional safety. He offers a soft, relieved smile. "Me too." There's no confession or declaration, just mutual acceptance that distance has caused more pain than boundaries ever could. She leans slightly toward him, the movement subtle but intentional. Her shoulder brushes his arm. The contact is light, but the warmth of it pulses through him, grounding and exhilarating. Their breaths mingle in the chill, sinking in a slow rhythm. Neither rushes to speak. Silence now feels like shelter rather than avoidance. He reflects internally. How easily a bond can fracture under the burden of unvoiced fears. How deeply he values the simple warmth of her presence. She finally breaks the silence, voice low and sincere. "I don't want to shut you out. I needed to protect us." Her words reveal love not yet spoken, affection expressed through restraint. He nods, eyes softening. "We don't have to pretend there's nothing here, but we can be careful together." She exhales, tension releasing from her shoulders. The shift feels monumental, choosing connection within constraint, warmth without recklessness. Rebuilding isn't a grand gesture. It's small acts of trust renewed. The coat on her shoulders, the closeness, the shared silence. All signal a slow return to emotional intimacy. The part closes with hope blooming gently. Two hearts willing to thaw walls built in fear, choosing presence over distance as warmth returns, piece by careful piece. Hours of storm and silence eventually soften into quiet calm. The heater hums steadily, the fluorescent lights warm rather than harsh. Something fundamental has shifted, not dramatically, but undeniably. The emotional coldness has melted into fragile warmth, earned through vulnerability rather than comfort. They gather their things slowly, neither eager to break the moment. He watches her wrap his coat tighter around her shoulders, aware of what it symbolizes. Not possession, but permission. A shared acknowledgement that closeness is no longer denied. They exit the office together, lights flicking off behind them. The hallway feels unfamiliar in its quiet, footsteps echoing with new meaning. When they push through the building's heavy glass doors, winter air brushes cold against their faces, sharp but invigorating. Snow blankets the parking lot, muffling the world like a soft hush. They stand beneath the dim amber glow of a street lamp. Their breath clouds gently between them. For a moment, neither speaks. The storm's rage has passed, leaving reflective stillness in its place. She loosens the coat and holds it between her hands. "You should take this back," she says, though her tone lacks insistence. He smiles faintly. "It looks warmer on you." Her eyes meet his, steady now, without the guarded tension. She steps closer, closing the last sliver of space between them. The movement is small but charged, toes sinking slightly into the snow, boots leaving prints side by side. She reaches out, fingers brushing his sleeve. The touch is tentative, then lingers with intention. He responds instinctively, covering her hand with his, warming it gently between his palms. The intimacy is soft, no urgency, just presence. She leans slowly into him, resting her forehead near his shoulder, arms sliding around his back in a deliberate embrace. Snow clings to her hair, sparkling under the light. The narrator feels her weight and warmth, the steady rhythm of her breath, and the quiet surrender of someone choosing connection despite uncertainty. He closes his eyes, letting himself return the embrace carefully, not gripping but holding, an expression of trust rather than claim. The coat slips slightly, enveloping them both in shared warmth. She speaks first, voice low but steady. Let's not shut each other out again. Her words are both promise and plea. The narrator feels emotion rise in his chest. Relief, longing, quiet joy. His response is gentle. I don't want to be cold. Not with you. There's no dramatic declaration of love. No vows. No resolution of the risks still hanging around them. Instead, there is chosen closeness, intentional, respectful, cautious yet hopeful. They pull back slightly, but their hands remain linked loosely. Snow falls lightly now, gentle flakes settling on their hair and clothing. The parking lot lights cast long shadows, their footprints trailing side by side towards separate cars, but not separate hearts. As they walk, hands still brushing, they share a final glance, soft, knowing, warm. A beginning forged from thawed silence. The story resolves with tenderness and promise. They choose connection over fear, warmth over distance, while acknowledging the delicate road ahead.